Hello aspirants, welcome to UPSC Geek. So today we will be dealing with the last part of the Plato series. Okay, that will be part 4. We have already done his theory of introduction of Plato, his life and time, his concept of allegory of cave, theory of forms, his Plato's concept of myth of metal. We have done his theory of justice, which is also one of the most important theory by Plato. Then we did his theory of education, his theory of philosopher king. Okay, we have already completed 7 topic in last 3 parts, and today we will be dealing with his 2 important concepts, that is theory of communism and basically decline of ideal state and assessment of Plato. Okay, so these are the important notion which was alluded by Plato in order to make any state and आइडियल स्टेट. ओके, सो बेसिकली अगर मैं आपको सीधे शब्दों में कहूँ तो प्लेटो का मेन गोल था टू अचीव अ आइडियल स्टेट. ओके, टू हैव टू मेक अ सिटी स्टेट ऑफ एथेंस एज ए आइडियल स्टेट. ओके, सो ही प्रोपाउंडेड सर्टेन थ्योरी दैट इज his theory of justice, right? Like his basic idea was that अगर कोई स्टेट है तो वो एक जस्ट स्टेट होना चाहिए. ओके, तभी वो आइडियल होगा. तो उस जस्ट स्टेट को बनाने के लिए इसने अपना कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ मिथ ऑफ मेटल दिया कि वन पर्सन वन जॉब, राइट? लाइक अ पर्सन हु इज स्पेशलाइज्ड इन पर्टिकुलर जॉब, हु इज मेड फॉर पर्टिकुलर जॉब, शुड स्टिक टू दैट पर्टिकुलर जॉब. ओके, if all people will do it, then the state will become a just state. Okay, which will be equivalent to his ideal state. That's why he's given the idea of myth of metal, then theory of justice. Okay, then he also propounded the theory of education, his theory of education, where he propounded the idea of equal education for both men and women in order to get that one philosopher king. Okay, that's why he next theory was his theory of philosopher king. Okay, so doing this in all those three parts. If you guys haven't watched those 3 parts, I would sincerely request you all to go and have a look of that so that you will better understand it. Okay, so now his 8 theory is theory of communism basically. So let's start with his theory. Okay, so basically in his theory of the philosopher king, Plato also fears that sometimes even philosophers can become corrupt. Okay, that was the problem given by Plato. If we look at his some of the previous slides, he has propounded that even the institution of philosopher king can go corrupt. Okay, it can happen that the passion in philosopher king dominates his reasons and he starts promoting his self-interest. Okay, over a period of time there are probability that the philosopher king develops his passion, or his passion will dominate over other virtues like wisdom, and his notion of promoting the self-interest may occur. Okay, so thus selecting the best candidates for rulership is not sufficient and the objects of desires themselves be removed for the class of rulers. So here Plato is going to a step beyond by advocating an idea that just selecting a good philosopher king is not sufficient. The object of desire themselves be removed from the class of rulers. Okay, for this Plato proposes the communism. Okay, that is common ownership. Okay, so if we make everything common, okay, there are less chances that the philosopher king will develop a trait of passion. Okay, that's why the Plato, he is propounding the idea of communism. Okay, of property and family for auxiliaries in ruler classes. Okay, communism of property and family. Okay, for auxiliaries, that is soldier warrior class and the ruler class, only for 2 classes, not for the third ones. Okay, for Plato, if education is the primary machinery to create the ideal state, communism is the supplementary machinery. Okay, so as I have told you just right now that Plato propounded certain ideas that to have an ideal state, we first need to streamline our education machinery, and the second will be the communism system. Okay, the institution of communism, in order to have a just state, in order to have a ideal state. Okay, so that is the notion why Plato is propounding his idea of communism. That is the basic idea behind that. Okay, so in Plato's theory of communism, the guardian class will not be allowed to own property or have families of their own. Okay, so guardian class is basically what warrior class or the auxiliary class. They will not be allowed to have any property or families. Okay, according to Plato, it is for a family that people earn money by unfair means. Okay, it not only leads to corruption but also nepotism. So see, the basic role of the warrior class was to protect the nation, okay, to protect the state during the time of threat. So if they themselves develop this sense of passion in them, mainly because of their family, because one earns income or money just for the family, okay, for the sake of family, to feed them, okay, for the sustenance and etc. That's why Plato is saying that it is for family that people earn money by unfair means. Okay, and it not only leads to corruption but also nepotism, which ultimately leads to corruption and nepotism. Okay, so thus in his system of communism, even mating will be carefully regulated by the state to ensure a noble progeny of future rulers. Okay, so first is regulation of family. Okay, now second concept that is Plato is giving here is that even the mating, okay, that is procreation will be regulated by the state. Okay, so that the offspring, okay, so that the future generation that shall be created will be noble in nature. Okay, noble progeny. Okay, so that everyone becomes noble. We will see some of the criticism as well of all this notion of Plato, but in the later stages by his own student, that is Aristotle. Okay, so first was the communism of family, second is the communism of mating, like how mating will be regulated. You cannot independently or autonomously go and create or procreate with any partner you want. Even your procreation will be regulated by the state. That is what Plato is propounding here. Okay, such a process will be carried out by selecting the noblest of Athenian males and females and outside the institution of family. Okay, so Plato is not supporting the idea or the institution of family here. Just for the sake of procreation, the most noblest of Athenian males and females will be selected, okay, and they will be made to mate with each other, okay, in order to create noble progeny. Okay, two noble male and female coming together to procreate a noble offspring. That is the idea. Okay, the children. So the basic notion here is that usually to procreate, what we do, we have a family, right? We go and marry someone and create a family, then we create our future generation. But here it is not like that. Plato is restricting the idea of family because Plato don't want the auxiliary guardian class to go corrupt, right? And the basic idea behind that is that Plato thinks that due to family, because of family itself, the people go and earn income or wealth through unfair means. Okay, and if we will eliminate this institution of family, there are higher chances that even the guardian class or the people of Athens will not follow or practice those unfair means. Okay, so the children so born will not know their true parents and they will come to identify the state as their family. Okay, just think those things in today's scenario and just like think it aloud, okay, and leave in the comment box whether is it possible to follow such and such notions of Plato in today's time, where he is saying the idea that children so born, okay, of such regulated mating will not be knowing their parents at all, who their parents are, and they will come to identify the state as their family. Okay, and they are completely under the state. Okay, state will be their only family. Okay, thus children will also be trained to identify with the state from childhood. Okay, so this notion or the sense of patriotism will be developed within the children for the state. Okay, that is what Plato is saying. This will also lead to the liberation of women, as they will be free to perform their duties towards the state and participate in political affairs. Okay, so this is also giving an adding advantage to the women, as Plato is saying here that they will be free to perform any maternal duties that they are bound to be during their pregnancy or during the formative years of a kid. Okay, they will be free so that they can perform their duties in political affairs and in the functions of the state. Okay, so he wants to give equal opportunity to both men and women. Okay, that's why he is propounding the idea of communism, where the children will not be the responsibility of mother, and it will completely be taken care by the state, okay, so that even women can free themselves of the duties, and they can engage themselves in the function of the state. That is the idea behind the communism of children, okay. So it is also important to note that in Plato, communism is only meant for the guardian class, okay. Here Plato is saying that communism is only meant for guardian class. Since they have power, they can become corrupt. Communism for artisans is neither possible nor required, okay. So see, guardian class are who? Guardian class are basically the warrior class, and hence they possess immense power, okay. And hence Plato is restricting communism only to the guardian class, because he is saying wide scope of corruption in guardian class, because they have power, they have authority, they can misuse it, okay, to practice unjust means, okay, to satiate the needs and requirement of the family. So that's why he is limiting the idea of communism only to the guardian class, okay. Communism for artisans is neither possible nor required, okay. They are men of appetite and hence cannot control their desires. So here Plato is also accepting that the artisan class or the trader class, they are basically men of appetite, they have huge desires and it cannot be controlled. So let's not promote communism among them, okay. And also because they are not in power, they will not have the opportunity to be corrupt, okay. So they are independent, they do not have any authority or power, so they are less likely, it is less likely that they will go corrupt, okay. That's why Plato is not finding it imperative to impose communism on them as well, okay. So let's critically evaluate his theory of communism, okay, the Plato's theory of communism. While Plato is a radical thinker, why radical thinker here is he is taking the extreme of the decisions, like he wants to make his state very ideal, he wants to choose the best among the rest as his philosopher king, okay. He wants to promote communism where he wants to like where he wants to regulate family, kids, mating and etc entirely by the state, okay. So he's taking all this decision a very radical one, okay. So that's why while Plato is a radical thinker, we see moderation in Aristotle, okay. So here his student Aristotle is kind of moderating his extremities, okay, extremities of Plato. Plato is not hesitant to suggest radical solution to solve problems, okay. And his theory of communism and abolishment of private property and family institutions are evidence for that. As I have told you, how he is going to the extent of radicalism to promote the idea of communism and complete abolishment of private property, okay. So so Aristotle is a more pragmatic thinker, okay. Aristotle is more pragmatic thinker in the sense he is more practical. He is not stepping in the zone where he thinks that whatever idea or the solution I am prescribing for the illness will not be practicable, okay. For him, one should not sacrifice the good for the sake of the best, okay. This is the golden statement to summarize Aristotle, okay. One should not sacrifice good for the sake of best, okay. Thus, rather than talking about the best state, he talks about the best practicable state, okay. That's why Aristotle is taking a madhyam marg here, okay, that instead of talking about best ideal state, he talks about best practicable state, like which state can be the best practicable, okay. Aristotle is conservative, okay, though he is conservative, he wants to preserve the institution, customs and traditions. Aristotle is also conservative, that's why he is wanting to promote institutions, customs and traditions. Institutions of what? Family. Customs of what? Marriage. Traditions of what? Mating, okay. So he is conservative in nature, that's why he do not want to alter these institutions, customs and tradition as it is done, as it is being done by Plato, okay, his teacher, who is very radical in nature. He prefers to rely on the collective wisdom of wisdom of ages rather than wisdom of one person, okay. So as Aristotle believes that uh, 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 wisdom of ages, okay, wisdom of ages is more important than wisdom of one person, okay. He is somewhere taking more collective approach than individualistic approach as was taken by the Plato, okay. So guys, one question for you all, what are the three institutions for which Plato suggested communism? Okay, just think, do not reverse the video back, just think about it, which I have said just in the last slide, and keep that on the comments. Okay, what are the factors, or what are the things prevailing in the society which Plato suggested the idea to promote communism, okay, in order to inhibit the corruption among the guardian class? Okay, so answer me that question in the comment section. Okay, so in response to Plato's theory of communism, Aristotle suggests that it is true that property leads to corruption, but property also has many constructive implications. Okay, so Aristotle is suggesting the idea that though property can lead to corruption, but property has also many constructive implications. Okay, constructive implications in the sense it can also be a motivation to work. Okay, if I am doing something, but if I am not getting something in return as a tangible asset, why will I get, from where will I get motivated to continue my work, to sustain my work? That is the basic idea of Aristotle. Okay, so according to Aristotle, property is a source of motivation, okay, and gives a sense of achievement to individuals. Okay, so those who own property are men of reason. Okay, so according to Plato, uh, according to Plato, who are the men of reason? Who possess wisdom. Okay, but here according to Aristotle, who is taking more pragmatic approach, he is propounding the idea that those who own property are men of reason. Okay, additionally, those who have property will prefer stability. Okay, property is itself a virtue. Okay, it is a source of charity. Okay, so see here it is a complete premise of modern capitalistic approach, okay, which is given by the capitalist thinkers, okay, the liberal thinkers, basically, who is saying that, so the precursor of that particular modern ideology is Aristotle. Okay, kind of that we can take the notion from Aristotle, we can trace the genesis to Aristotle here. Okay, where Aristotle himself is saying that those who own property are men of reason. Okay, additionally, those who have property will prefer stability. Okay, the men of property will always prefer stability. Okay, why? Because they want to sustain their accumulations, wealth, and etc. Right, they do not want a revolution to completely let go of their accumulated wealth. Okay, so property is itself a virtue, and hence he is propounding, so the men are interested to accumulate wealth and property, they will always prefer stability. Right, hence there will be less chances of anarchy, or let's say a revolution or a war. Right, that's why in a sense he is also promoting the idea of property. Okay, so property is itself a virtue, it is a source of charity. Okay, until and unless I myself possess a property, how will I engage myself in a charity? Simple logic, right? Thus it would not be a good idea to deprive ourselves of the virtues of property. Okay, so this is basically a critical evaluation to the Plato, as Plato has taken a radical decision to promote communism among the classes. How Aristotle is giving here a more pragmatic approach, okay, where he is saying that it is not completely possible to promote communism of properties, okay, like abolishment of private property in any class, okay, irrespective of their virtues or nature, because property in itself is a virtue, right, where a property accumulation of wealth becomes a motivation to work, and hence men who possess property will also prefer stability. Okay, so this is the basic idea which is given as a counter argument to the Plato theory of communism. Okay, so Aristotle also strongly disapproves of Plato's theory of communism of family. Okay, now we have seen Aristotle's critical evaluations of Plato's theory of property, okay, private abolishment of private property. Now what Aristotle is saying about Plato's communism of family. Okay, so here Aristotle also strongly disapproves. Okay, Aristotle also strongly disapproves of Plato's theory of communism of family. Okay, let's see why he disapproves the Plato's communism of family. While it is true that family leads to nepotism, but as an institution of family has a lot of importance for society as well as for an individual. Okay, he is advocating the idea that though family can promote the idea of nepotism, it is very important the family, the institution of family is very important for the sustenance of the society. Okay, it is very important for the sake of society, right? Because at the end we are homo sapiens, we are the social animals, right? We need family. Okay, we cannot survive in isolation. Okay, this is what being alluded by Aristotle here. Family is a source of emotional and social stability. Okay, through his theory of communism of family, Plato wants to take us back to the barbaric ages. Okay, so basically Aristotle is giving the idea that through his theory of communism of family, Plato wants to take us back to the barbaric stage where like a kind of primitive ages. Okay, right, where the males were or the females were independent of each other. They do not have the institutions of family and etc. They used to just go around and do stuffs which are socially unacceptable. Okay, so that's why Plato, Aristotle is alluding the idea that through his through Plato's theory of communism of family, he is wanting to push us back to the era of primitive ages. Okay, or the barbaric ages. So this is the sum total of Aristotle's criticism of Plato's theory of communism of family. Okay, thus Aristotle criticized Plato's communism, suggesting that the remedy is worse than the disease. Okay, so here Aristotle, just to summarize Aristotle criticism, Aristotle is saying that the Plato's remedy is worse than the disease itself. Okay, so as we have seen in the statement that Plato analysis of a disease is good, but his prescription is not suitable. Okay, so here also on the same line, Aristotle is also criticizing Plato, suggesting that the remedy is worse even than the disease. Okay, so let's see. So here we hear the term Platonic communism, but we also hear the modern notion of communism, that is modern communism. Okay, and most of the time there are chances that people get confused out of these two terminologies. Okay, to put a light upon it, just let's go through it so that we create a distinction in our brain that the Plato's notion of communism was not alike as the modern communism. Okay, that we hear in today's world, like Russia, like China and etc. They are communist countries. Okay, so what is the difference between today's communism and the Platonic communism? Okay, while there are apparent similarities between the theory of communism given by Plato and by the communists, there are fundamental differences. Okay, there are very fundamental basic differences between the Platonic communism and modern communism. Okay, so as suggested by Brian Nelson in his book Western Political Thought, so remember to quote them, the author and the book, that is Western Political Thought. Plato's communism is ascetic, whether the purpose is not the redistribution of resources but rather to remove objects of desire. Okay, so in today's modern communism, the basic idea behind promoting communism is because of redistribution of resources or the wealth, so that it do not lead to the accumulation of wealth in like single hands, right? In the sense capitalism, they are against capitalism which lead to the accumulation of wealth within a certain classes of society, right? So today's communism is completely based on the redistribution of the resources, where a state comes and regulate the distribution of resources. Okay, so that everyone gets equal distribution, okay, or the equal parts of the resources. But the Plato's notion of communism was, the basic aim was to eliminate the desires or corruption in a particular class. Okay, that was the guardian class. That is the basic difference. So difference we have seen was the basic final agenda or the goal of the communism. Okay, so the goal of Platonic communism was to eliminate corruption or desires, appetite basically. Okay, but modern communism goal is redistribution of wealth. Okay, so there is a basic difference or the fundamental difference in the first is the goal. Okay, let's see some of them, some more of the differences. So here like there are chances that this question might come in the exam. Let's say, okay, difference between Plato's notion of communism and modern communism. So these are the points which you can attempt. So Plato's communism is associated with Plato because he is the brainchild behind Plato's communism, and modern communism is associated with Karl Marx. Okay, we will later be dealing with the Karl Marx as well and his theories, which is indeed very fascinating. And second is Plato is very idealistic. Okay, he is always promoting the radical decisions, and Marx is materialistic. Okay, Marx is materialistic in the sense he will always be talking about a particular class, that is bourgeoisie, who is exploiting over proletarians. Okay, proletariats. So this is the basic approach of Marx. Okay, so Plato wants to create an ideal state and believes in the supremacy of state. Okay, he wants to create ideal state. Okay, by removing corruption, by removing desires, appetite. Okay, where Marx considers state as an instrument of exploitation. Okay, and wants to end the state, whereas Marx wants to completely end the capitalist liberal state. Okay, because Marx considers state as an exploitative instrument. Okay, where state is responsible for exploitation of the proletariat class. Okay, so Plato expects citizens to sacrifice their interest for the sake of state. Okay, because Plato propounds the idea that state is individual writ large, but here Marx calls for revolution against the state. Okay, so here Plato promotes the pro-state ideology, whereas Marx is promoting an anti-state ideology, because the basic nature of state in the both cases, they are varying. Okay, in case of Plato, state is always a precursor to individual because state is individual writ large, but in case of Marx, state is nothing but a exploitative instruments. Okay, of particular class over particular class. That's why he is against state and calling for a revolution. That is the basic idea behind that. Plato divides, the fifth one is Plato divides the state into three classes. Okay, as we have seen, he is dividing a class into a ruler class, a philosopher ruler class, a auxiliary class, and the trader class, whereas Marx wants to completely abolish the classes. Okay, according to Marx, there are always a notion of class division or distinction, that one class will start dominating over the weaker classes. Okay, big fish will start eating the small fishes. So that is what Marx idea about class distinction is, and hence Marx is against the idea of classes, and hence he wants to abolish classes. Okay, the sixth point is nowhere does Plato supports violence. Okay, Plato is like against violence, because whatever theory he is propounding was during the time of Peloponnesian War. Okay, which he was completely pissed off, and he wants to do something to end the instability that is created in a city state of Athens, right? And hence he wants to create an ideal state so as to not have any further such violences. Okay, he is against violence, whereas Marx is supporter of violence. How he is supporter of violence? Because he is promoting the idea of complete revolution against state. Okay, that's why he is a supporter of violence. So there is a famous statement by Marx which says that there is no birth without blood. Okay, there cannot be any birth without blood. If there is to be a birth, the blood is imminent. Okay, so that is the basic idea of Marx. Okay, the seventh point is Plato considers the idea as the ultimate reality. So the notion of idea is the ultimate reality for Plato. Okay, but Marx consider idea as a false consciousness. But Marx consider idea just as a misleading, okay, a false consciousness, misleading to the youth basically. Okay, he do not give that consideration to the idea because he is materialist in nature. Okay, he believes in the present material aspects of the world. Okay, the eighth point is Plato proposes communism even in regard to wives and family. Okay, as we have just seen his theory of communism, where he also promotes the idea of communism of wives and family and children. Okay, but Marx tells about communism only in terms of means of production. Okay, means of production, that is economic terms, that is wealth, labor, capital, and etc. Okay, so that one class, that is bourgeoisie class, do not succeed in accumulating all of the wealth. Okay, and hence to ensure the equal distribution. Okay, so Marx is only propounding the idea of communism of means of production and not the family, wives and etc., or the private property as is proposed by Plato. Okay, so these are the list of differences, guys, okay, between the Plato's communism and modern communism. Okay, so let's see some of the similarities. What are some of the similarities between both ideas of Plato communism and modern communism? Okay, so both believed the private property is an evil. Okay, so both believed in the notion that the private property is an evil. That's why Plato is propounding the idea of abolishment of private property, and also the Marx is propounding the idea of accumulation of private property or the wealth, okay, by a particular class. So both are suggesting the idea that private property is an evil. Okay, both give the concept of class. There is a class, ruler class, auxiliary class, and trader class or the artisans class in Plato's time, and also there is a bourgeoisie class, proletariat class, etc., and they are talking about class distinction in Marx time as well. So both are giving concept of class. Okay, those similarities between Plato and Marx are very few and superficial. The differences are fundamental. So the differences are very fundamental. Okay, so we cannot say that the similarities will overpower the differences, because differences here are very fundamental, very important. Okay, but similarities are somewhere superficial as a basic concept of communism at the end. Okay, so that is the similarities and differences between these two notions. Okay, so guys, just jot down, like just to ask your question without reversing back, just try to recall what are the three differences, major differences between Plato's communism and modern communism. Okay, and leave that in the comment section. It will also help you to recall better in the exam, guys. So I am just giving you these exercises in between so that you listen it carefully and ensure to learn only through the classes, and you do not have to go back and revise again and again. Okay, so just try to follow this practice and ensure to recall it better here and also during the exams. Okay, so we have seen the similarities. So make sure to enlist three differences between Plato's communism and modern communism in the comment section. Okay, so let's say the concept of decline of an ideal state. Okay, towards the end of the republic, Plato acknowledges that even an ideal state must eventually decline. Okay, Plato himself is acknowledging that an ideal state must eventually decline, since after all it is a human institution. Okay, human institution created by human itself, hence it is prone to decline. Further, since the state is an individual writ large, the decline at the level of state will also lead to the decline at the level of individual. Hence, see, just to break down this statement that state is an individual writ large, a city or a state is also an individual or a soul writ large. Okay, soul writ large. So basically Plato is promoting an idea or propounding an idea that if a state will decline, if an ideal state will decline, there are also chances that the level of individual will also decline. Okay, and the decline will start, Plato suggests, in the process of selection of children as future guardians. Okay, and he is giving the cause of that decline as the selection of children as future guardians. Okay, because not all kids will be that effective. Okay, upon becoming full members of the ruling class, some of them will deviate from principles of state. Okay, upon becoming the members of ruling class, some will become the deviate from the principles of state. Okay, that is anti-corruption, or wisdom and etc., and seek to amass private property, and hence they will become a part of the ruling class. There will be a sense of passion or appetite which will also get evolved or emerge within them. Hence they will also practice the accumulation of private property. Okay, the decline of reason from position of supremacy. Okay, and hence there will be decline of reason from the position of supremacy. As we all know that wisdom is something, or reason is something which must be a prior virtue of, or the supreme virtue of philosopher king. Okay, and hence when the future generation of ruling classes, when they will practice the heinous practices of accumulation of private property as per the Plato, there will be decline of reason from the position of supremacy, okay, because here the appetite, the virtue of appetite or the passion will take over the supreme position of reason, okay. The virtue of courage will be supreme and honor will become more important than reason, okay. Here he is saying that the virtue of courage will be supreme and honor will become more important than reason, okay. As being the part of a ruling class, somewhere ego will also drive in, and hence the personal individual honor will become more important than reason itself. The state will be ruled by warriors instead of philosopher king. Hence we know that warriors possess lot of authority, powers. There are chances that the state will be ruled by warriors instead of philosopher kings, okay. Thus the monarchy will give way to democracy, okay, and hence there will be democracy instead of monarchy, okay. Thus the future generation, the children of auxiliary classes, okay, thus the future generation, the children of auxiliaries who acquired power in the first stage will possess neither wisdom nor courage, okay. So hence the children of future generation, that is children of auxiliary classes, who will be taking over the philosopher kings, okay. So they will be starting ruling the city state, okay, and hence the children, there is no guarantee that the children of auxiliary class will also possess the same reason which were possessed by the philosopher king, okay, and hence there are chances that it will lead to the drive of passion, appetite, and hence accumulation of the property, hence corruption, and hence decline of the ideal state, okay, decline of the ideal state basically. Okay, that is the decline of an ideal state. So let's see further. However, the virtue of temperance will still be present, okay, as through the practice, rigorous practice, the virtue of temperance in the future generation will always be present, okay, and this generation will be careful to preserve their wealth and property, okay. As temperance will always be present, they will also be careful to preserve their wealth and family. They will believe in ethic of working hard and saving the money, okay. They will not completely go corrupt, they will also have ethic of working hard and saving the money. Thus the rule of the few rich, oligarchy, will be established in the place of democracy, okay. See how he is giving the process of evolution of different types of governments, okay. First he is starting with ideal state, okay, by establishing a philosopher king. Then he is giving a chance that there are chances that an ideal state might be taken over by a democracy, where a form of government in which rulers are motivated by ambitions and honors, okay. As the philosopher king will be taken over by the children or the future generation of auxiliary classes, that is by their power, that is their through their authority, there are chances that they will also be driven by their passions and etc., and hence that will lead to the accumulation of property, okay, and hence it will lead to the democracy, okay, where a particular government is driven by the appetite or motivation to hold property, okay, which will lead to the oligarchy, where a few rich people, few people who have accumulated wealth, that is oligarchy, will establish in place of democracy, okay. From ideal state to democracy, democracy to oligarchy. So here democracy is basically a transition between ideal state and oligarchy. That is the basic idea, okay. So this we are seeing the decline process of ideal state, okay. So remember this, the children of oligarchs, such as Plato, will be used to having money and will not even possess temperance. What to speak of courage and wisdom, okay, and gradually the label of individual will further decline, right. Here we are seeing the label of individual big declining, okay. From philosopher king we have seen how the future generation or the auxiliary class will have taken over, okay. Now the future generation of auxiliary class are taking over the auxiliary class themselves, okay, right. The dominance of temperance is also coming down, and they are completely driven by what, the appetite or the desire, okay. So hence Plato is suggesting the idea that the future and future generation will also be driven completely by the appetite and desires, and their virtue of temperance will also get negated or eliminated, okay, or gradually decline, okay, and courage and wisdom will completely get negated. the liberty and freedom to pursue individual passions will be the prime concerns for the generation, and there will be a point where the freedom to pursue individual appetite and passions, okay, will be the prime concern for the generation, okay. Since nobody will possess the virtue, equality will prevail in the society, okay. Since nobody will follow the virtue, there will be equality which will be prevailing in the society, like the class distinction between ruler class or auxiliary class or the artisans class, it will completely get blurred, okay. The line will get blurred because here nobody mainly practicing the virtue they were destined to, okay. The class distinction of Plato is mainly based on the virtue they possess, okay, either wisdom or courage or temperance, okay. Hence nobody will practice those sort of virtue. Even like, see, the evolution of ruling class, we have seen how the future generation will develop more appetite, which will lead to the loss of supremacy of reason and courage, okay, and hence they will become, they will completely be driven by temperance, okay. Hence there will be no class distinction and everyone will become equal, okay. Although there is freedom, there will be no real knowledge of what to pursue. The efforts will almost end in frustration, okay. Hence, since there is a freedom, there will be no real knowledge, okay, or reason to what to pursue, and hence it will lead to the frustration, okay, because everyone will be chasing their desires and passions, okay. Everyone will be chasing the limited resources, and hence it will lead to the frustration among the citizens, okay. These citizens we can call full-fledged citizens of the cave. Again, the full-fledged citizens of the cave which we have seen in his idea of allegory of cave, okay, where they were the ignorance, they were thinking the materialistic shadow within the cave as the real object, right. Here also Plato is suggesting the idea that here there will be a time where everyone will become equal, right, equal in the sense of their wisdom, in the sense of their courage and temperance, okay. Everyone will be driven by passion and they will become to the man alike in the cave where they were thinking their shadows as the real objects, okay. Since there is equality, it will be the rule of people and what Plato calls democracy, and since it will be the equality, there will be rule of people, because there are no philosopher king, there is no auxiliary class, there is no individual with wisdom or courage, okay, and hence everyone is being driven by passions, okay, and hence everyone is equal. There will be a rule of people, what Plato calls as a democracy, okay. So continue. The state will give way to the rule of despot, okay, tyranny. Hence everyone become equal. There will be one person who will be emerging out of them and he will be establishing the rule of despot or tyranny, okay. This, according to Plato, is the natural consequence of democracy. That is the natural consequence of democracy, okay, next to the democracy. Basically, when the mass of people will realize that they are being oppressed by the rich, they will select a leader among them to alter the status quo, okay. When the masses of people, okay, the mobs or the people, ignored people, they will realize that they are being oppressed by the rich individuals, they will select a leader among them to alter the status quo, to throw the exploitative leader, okay, to throw the exploitative rich person who is exploitative over them, they will throw him out and they will select among themselves a one leader who will be ruling them, okay. Such a leader, however, when will come to power, oppress the rich and poor alike and become a tyrant, and hence when such a person will be selected among the people themselves, he will suppress both the rich and the poor, okay, in order to possess his dominance, in order to promote his self-interest, okay, in order to establish his dominance over the others, and hence it will lead to this single person rule or a tyrant, okay, establishing tyranny, okay. This theory of the decline of an ideal state is a sobering realization of the pragmatism in the Republic of Plato, okay. So this is the sobering realization, this is the state of decline of an ideal state that is given as a pragmatic futuristic notion of the decline of an ideal state in Plato's magnum opus, that is Republic, okay. Although known for his romanticism and his utopian radical ideas, the description of the decline of an ideal state gives a different perspective on Plato, okay. Though most of his idea gives very romanticized perspective on politics, his idea of decline of an ideal state is very it seems to be very realistic, because the legacy of his decline of an ideal state will be carried even by his student, that is Aristotle. Okay, and he will be also propounding the same notion of the decline of an state. Okay, how a ideal state will lead to the oligarchy, and then how it will lead to a tyranny, and etc and etc. Okay, democracy, then tyranny. So this is something which is not so platonic in nature, because Plato has given completely out of the line concept, which is not usual to his previous theories, like his theory of philosopher king, his theory of communism. Okay, it is very pragmatic and realistic in nature. Okay, which even can be seen even to these days. So let's do some of the assessment of Plato. Okay, so the Republic is regarded as one of the greatest pieces of work written on political philosophy. Okay, this is not what I am saying, this is said by Rousseau himself. Okay, the OG रूसो ने बोला कि द रिपब्लिक इज रिगार्डेड एज वन ऑफ द ग्रेटेस्ट पीसेस ऑफ work written on political philosophy. Okay, so it is also considered, the Republic is also considered as the magnum opus of Plato. Okay, nonetheless, even the father of political philosophy is not above criticism. Okay, even the father of political philosophy, that is Plato, is not above criticism. Okay, so let's see some of the contradiction in the ideas of Plato. Okay, so what are the various contradictions? There are serious inconsistencies and contradictions in the ideas of Plato. Okay, inconsistencies and contradiction. The justification of one idea contradicts others. Okay, so the justification that is propounded by Plato is basically contradicting his another idea. Okay, let's see what are they. Plato was too great a thinker to achieve consistency by sacrificing truth. Okay, thus we do not see any attempt in Plato to hide this contradiction. Okay, so basically Plato is sacrificing an extent of truth to have an ideal state. Okay, so there is a consistency by sacrificing truth. Okay, we are seeing how his prescriptions are very radical in nature, which may not hold true. Okay, but his consistency of holding that notion of idealism is consistent throughout the theories. Okay, the first inconsistency here, the critics are talking about his first inconsistency. Okay, so this these points can be mentioned in writing critics, okay, of Plato's different theories in exam paper. So just note down some of the lines so that you can remember them and write them as a critics. Okay, to make your answer more holistic and inclusive. Okay, the first inconsistency arises when Plato suggests measure to ensure that rulers do not go corrupt. Okay, so first inconsistency when he talks about the theory of philosopher king, he suggests the idea that the philosopher king will not go corrupt. Okay, it is suggested that the rulers who have attained the state of good, like we have seen after the 50 years of training, the individual who will sustain the process will reach to the state of good. Okay, where the notion of idea will be supreme to any other notion, and hence it is very less likely that he will go corrupt. Okay, that is what is said by Plato, which is even beyond knowledge and who have come out of the cave of ignorance. Okay, so have no lust for power. Okay, so this is the person, traits of person who have reached to the state of good. Okay, has reached beyond knowledge, who have no lust of power, who has completely came out of the cave of ignorance. Okay, so these rulers have a love for knowledge, they have complete love for knowledge and nothing else. Okay, so much so that they are not willing to rule, and they are doing it only as a matter of duty. Okay, so they think ruling as just their matter of duty and not a personal desire to rule. Okay, however, Plato himself expressed the doubt that sometimes the appetite in these rulers will overpower the reason. But again, in his theory of communism, okay, or in the problems that was suggested by Plato himself, that even these rulers can go by their passion sometimes. Okay, there are chances that even passion will dominate over them. Okay, so in first point he is saying the individual who has reached to the state of good, it is very less likely that they will go corrupt. Okay, but now he is also suggesting the idea, okay, that there are chances that there is a virtue of appetite which can take over the virtue of wisdom in rulers. Okay, so here we can see the inconsistency in Plato. Okay, so sometimes the appetite in these rulers will overpower the reason. Okay, and he proposes communism as a secondary mechanism to deal with it, as we have seen how he suggested the notion of communism to deal with this problem of Plato. Okay, however, as Socrates proposes and demonstrates in his own death, this cannot happen. Okay, as Aristotle told that the Plato's remedy is even worse than the disease. Okay, because it was not pragmatic, it was not best pragmatic. Okay, a person with knowledge cannot act otherwise. Okay, so thus it appears that Plato doubts that every very Socratic premise on which his theory is based. Okay, so Plato himself doubt the basic premise of Socratic on which his theory is based. Okay, on a later point of time. That is the second inconsistency. Okay, the second inconsistency is basically regarding the use of myth or noble lie to establish the principle of justice or truth. Okay, has been already discussed in the implication of we have discussed the implication of noble lie, where to promote a just he is taking the help of a lie, that is noble lie, to create that class distinction. Okay, he himself is promoting the idea of class division to have a just state. Okay, where he is not treating all the three classes equal, right, to have a just state. How paradoxical it is, he is propounding the idea of just state by advocating the idea of class division. Okay, so this is the second inconsistency that needs to be kept in mind. Okay, Plato proposes that the principles of justice application at the level of the individual are also applicable at the state level. Okay, as we have seen that the state is individual writ large. Okay, so justice applicable at the state level shall also be applicable at the individual level, is what is said by the Plato, and vice versa. Okay, thus what follows is that every person is in a state of justice only when he is ruled by a reason. Okay, so hence Plato's idea, which is implicating that so every person is in state of justice when he is ruled by reason. Okay, in his individual life. However, in the suggesting that only the persons made of golden metal are capable of acquiring knowledge, Plato denies the knowledge to a large section of people. Okay, as he said in his theory of justice, that if a state is ruled by a philosopher king in whom a virtue of wisdom or reason will dominate. Okay, and that will also be applicable to the individual lives, because even in individual life in whom reason will dominate, their life will be just life. Okay, just state, just life, just state, individual, just life. Okay, in both regions should dominate. But Plato himself said the notion that the reason only dominates in the in ruling classes. Okay, he is neglecting a great deal of people, a mass of people, that is auxiliary people and artisans people of basic moral education. His theory implicits that they are not be getting good education because they are not dominated by the reasons. Okay, Plato is again himself accepting, and again he is giving the contradictory idea, that is the inconsistency. Okay, thus what follows is that they are supposed to live the lives of injustice ruled by their passions and appetite. Thus there is an incompatibility between justice at the level of state and justice at the level of individual. Okay, so his basic idea of state is individual writ large is being challenged here. Okay, where there is a incompatibility, inconsistency between the level of state and justice at the level of individual. Okay, as we have seen, because reason dominates in the state, but it is not likely that reason dominates in all the individuals, because all the individual do not have that virtue of reason in them. Okay, there are warrior and trader class in whom the courage and temperance also dominate. Okay, so this also questions a basic premise of Plato, that state is an individual writ large. Okay, so it is a he is basically a Maven, Karl Popper, and his book enemies of the open society, criticizes Plato as Plato is an enemy of open society. Okay, Karl Popper, we have seen the question as well regarding this statement, where Karl Popper criticizes Plato as an enemy of an open society. Okay, so let's see why Popper is criticizing Plato. Open society denotes a democratic society marked by fundamental rights. Okay, so here Karl Popper is promoting the open society, a liberal one, where everyone is bestowed with the fundamental rights. Okay, Karl, sorry guys, Karl Popper in his book Open Society and Its Enemies calls Plato, Hegel, and Karl Marx as enemies of open society. Okay, he suggests that the theories of Plato have a dangerous tendencies toward totalitarianism. Okay, because they all are promoting a communism, theory of communism, or let's say Plato is suggesting a theory of philosopher king where single ruler is dominating over the people or the masses. Okay, hence it can leads towards the tendency of totalitarianism. That is what is said by Karl Popper. He believes that Plato's readers have been under the spell of Plato, which obstructs their judgment. Okay, so he is basically saying that the Plato readers or the followers of Plato's are completely swayed away by the beliefs or the ideas of Plato. Okay, and hence they are obstructing their own judgment. Okay, so here the basic idea is, as Aristotle, while analyzing Plato's theories, he analyzed that Plato theory is very radical in nature and that cannot be best practicable. Okay, in case of Plato's followers, hardcore followers, they are somewhere spellbound by the Plato's theory and they are obstructing their own judgments. Okay, that's why Karl Popper is criticizing them as well. They are completely spell of Plato and hence they are obstructing their own judgment. He calls Plato an enemy of an open society, right? Because he is somewhere promoting the idea of totalitarianism as a consequence. Okay, on the basis of following arguments. So let's see some of the argument which is given by the Popper. Okay, so first is essentialism. So it is linked to the Plato's theory of form. Okay, the Plato's theory of form that we have seen, the idea is holding more supremacy than the form. Okay, so theory of form, Plato suggests that the idea or the essence, that is form, is the absolute reality. Okay, the things which we see or experience are not absolute, but the form or the essence is the absolute reality. Okay, he makes us believe that essence is supreme knowledge and disregards the reality of this world. Okay, basic. Plato divorces us from reality and forces us to think about some reality which is beyond the understanding of common man. Okay, so basically Plato is giving very idealistic idea of the form, that the idea is the supreme knowledge. Okay, which cannot be easily perceived by common man. Okay, because common man is completely based on empiricist approach of knowledge. He learns what he experiences. Okay, our learning is completely based on the thing which we see, the concept of tabula rasa, that is our brain is a clean slate. Okay, and hence through experiences we keep on filling those slates. Okay, and hence our knowledge is completely based on materialistic things, based on worldly aspects. Okay, and hence Popper is suggesting the idea that Plato is divorcing us from the reality. Okay, and forcing us to think about some other reality which cannot easily be perceived by a common man. Okay, and second is holism. What is it? Plato does not give importance to the individual and sacrifices the individual in the name of collective. Okay, holism in the sense Plato is putting more emphasis on the state than the individual. Like Plato is advocating the idea that state is individual writ large. Okay, whatever is done for the sake of state, philosopher king for the sake of ideal state, communism for the sake of just state, theory of justice, and etc. So here Plato emphasis is more upon state than the individual, but at the end, as per the Popper, individual are the group of people who come together to create a state. Okay, that is the perspective of Popper, and hence he is criticizing Plato on the basis of holism, that Plato is giving overemphasis on the state rather than the individual. Okay, the third is the historicism. Okay, so historicism means the ideological use of history. Okay, ideological use of history in the sense uses of history just to prove our own preconceived notion or preconceived ideas. Okay, presenting history in the manner that serves political purpose. Plato has given the life cycle of an ideal state. Okay, the ideal state will decay into the rule of the soldier class, that is democracy, which will decay into the rule of rich, that is aristocracy. Thus, Plato suggests that to prevent decay, there is a necessity for the rigid and strong control of philosopher king. Okay, so here Plato is basically saying the idea that Popper is basically propounding the idea that Plato is basically misinterpreting the history for his political purpose. Okay, because he is giving his theory of decline of an ideal state on the basis of history, that an ideal state will lead to a democracy, okay, where the ruling will mainly be promoted based on the motivation or appetite or passion of the ruling class. Okay, which will ultimately decay into the oligarchy or aristocracy, where it will mainly be power will mainly be controlled by the rich oligarchy class. Then it will ultimately be decaying into democracy, then tyranny. Okay, thus Plato suggests that to prevent decay, there is a necessity for the rigid and strong control of the philosopher king. Okay, so what is the conclusion? So Popper suggests that all the totalitarian leaders reflect the above ideas. Okay, so he is basically assigning the label of totalitarian to the Plato and his school of followers. Okay, example, they establish the primacy of state, nation, race over the individual. For example, the Hitler regime in Nazi Germany. Okay, they put more emphasis on the state, nation and race over the individuals. Okay, to justify their rule, they rely on the creation of myth, okay, as done by the Plato, myths of metal. Okay, presenting myths as the ultimate reality. They give the law of decay and suggest that if people do not want decay or postpone it, they will have to make sacrifices. Okay, very logical and pragmatic, just to justify their concept of a particular thing. They promote the idea of myths, right, in order to make people obliged to that if people do not follow this set of things of norms, they will lead to the decay. Okay, and hence they have to make sacrifices. Okay, so sometimes Plato is also regarded as the first feminist. Okay, so let's see whether Plato is really a first feminist or not. Okay, it is also very important concept, people, like the Plato is the first feminist. Okay, there are questions which are already asked into this pair of Plato's notion. Feminists represent a school of thought that demands gender equality and gender justice. Okay, as we have seen in various theories of Plato, that how he was very gender equality oriented. Okay, he did not discriminate between men and women, as will be done by his student, that is Aristotle. Despite coming from a higher patriarchal society, Plato never believed that women suffer from any natural disability, either in the field of education or in the field of governance. Okay, Plato never believed in the idea that women had this natural disability to rule or to participate in the function of the state. Okay, for the governance, he gives equality of opportunity to women. He also gives equality of opportunity to the women, as we have seen his theory of communism, where he is trying to promote the idea of state regulated children's. Okay, where children will be completely taken by the state, so that women can offload the responsibility of engaging themselves in the maternal care, so that they can participate in the functions of the state or the rules. Okay, so thus Plato does not make any discrimination based on gender for the post of philosopher king. Okay, so he do not make any discrimination based on gender for the post of philosopher king. He is throwing open the post of philosopher king for both men and women. Okay, thus women can also become philosopher queens in Plato's ideal state. Okay, so these are some of the ideas which suggest that Plato was the first feminist. Okay, further, Plato's communism of family suggests that the state takes custody of child, as I have already told you. This Plato suggests will have a liberating influence on women and free them for other important works like education and governance. Okay, when children will be taken care by the state, the maternal care responsibility of the women will reduce, okay, and hence women can engage themselves in other activities like education and governance. So this is the basic ideas which are being propounded by Plato, okay. So whether Plato was the first feminist or not, we do not know, because we do not know the people who are before Plato, right? Remains a matter of debate. Those who think that Plato cannot be regarded as a feminist believe that for feminists the main objective is liberation of women, okay. Those people who do not regard Plato as the first feminist, they do not regard him as a first feminist because they mainly believe in the objective of the complete liberation of women, okay. The liberation of women was not the primary aim of Plato. Here primary aim of Plato was not the liberation of women, but to have an ideal state, okay, which is based on gender equality, okay, not the liberation of women. He aimed to make women free so that their talent could be utilized in the service of state, okay. So basically he taken that gender equal approach, basically so as to utilize the potential of women to create that ideal state, okay. This is very pragmatic approach even to these days. People, like, we are aspiring to make India as a $5 trillion economy, and women, like, gender sex ratio is now almost equal, okay. We have equal number of men and women in our country, but we still, the massive population of Indian women lies dormant, where they do not participate in any kind of production activities like industrial production activity or any kind of job. Though there are significant number of women who are coming to the mainstream, there are still lot to be done in this particular arena, okay. When both men and female potentials are equally utilized, then the process of reaching to the goal of the 5 trillion or let's say $10 trillion economy will be much more faster than whatever we are achieving, whatever the rate in which we are achieving right now, okay. So see how relevant his notion was during that time, that we have to tap the potentials of both men and women irrespective of their capabilities, okay. So however, we cannot ignore the fact that Plato was the first person in Western world to recognize that women do not suffer from any natural disability, okay. As I have said, Plato is the first person who accepted that women do not suffer from any natural disability. He has given the idea of the philosopher queens, okay, which itself is a very revolutionary idea for his times, okay. So what are few other remarks on Plato, okay, that can also come in, let's say, essay or also in PSIR paper. Plato is a philosophy, philosophy is Plato, okay. As we have seen that the entire Western philosophy is footnote to Plato. The next level is Plato is philosophy and philosophy is Plato, okay, because Plato is someone who has given a direction to philosophy, okay. The safest common characterization of the European philosophical custom is that it consists of a series of footnotes to Plato, okay. It is given by A.N. Whitehead, again a political philosopher, political scientist as well. One can either be Platonic or anti-Platonic, can never be non-Platonic, okay. It is again given by Karl Popper, which gives the significance or importance of Plato. So Popper promotes the idea that either one can be a Platonic or anti-Platonic. Either you can align with the idea of Plato, or you can completely disagree, but you can never be non-Platonic, because somewhere you have your ideas will somewhere be impacted or influenced by Plato, okay, because he is a father of political philosophy. Hence you cannot be non-Platonic. So these are some of the statements which needs to be given a thought upon. So think upon this statements propounded by different thinkers, and come up with your own set of pointers, at least, like if such questions will ask, such questions or such statement will be given in the exam, what kind of thought will you attempt in the answer, right? Like it should be balanced, like pro versus anti, okay. So a balanced approach needs to be taken into consideration, okay. With this we end our Plato series today, people, and thank you so much for sticking till the very end. And always remember the motto of this channel is thus you strive so you thrive, okay. आप जितनी मेहनत करेंगे उतनी आपको फल मिलेगी. So follow, be consistent throughout the journey, persevere each day irrespective of the situations, make sure the targets which you have set for yourself, you are reaching to that particular target, and also ensure to subscribe UPSC Geek by NRG. Thank you so much. It was pleasure for me to bring this Plato series to the end. I am hoping that I have done some justice to the people. I am very apologetic about the language, because I have to use this language so as to make you all guys convenient during the exam, if not now. Okay, so that the language comes to you, because the political science has its own language. Okay, there are certain terminology which cannot get translated in, let's say, English, or let's say in Hindi, sorry. Okay, and even English will not do justice to them. Okay, so there is certain language which needs to be followed, and hence I stick to English for you all people. Just try and listen it slowly, in slower pace, take your time and just watch it. You will start getting, if not at once, second time for sure, third time very sure, fourth time sure shot. Okay, so just with this I take a bid